Hi everyone, coming again to you from Ms.B's kitchen. This is chapter 2 of Gatsby. I'm going to try and break it down so it doesn't take as long to load the videos. Okay, so it starts on page 23. Don't forget, your annotation focus is for imagery. Let's push this back so my face looks skinnier. Okay, imagery, word pictures, okay? Which means that the author is using really vivid description and lots of adjectives, especially with the five senses, to get an image in your head, okay? He's using these words to what we call elicit or make you give or think about something in your head, all right? Wants the reader to be able to picture something in his or her head, all right? So imagery. Starting from the beginning for those of you who haven't been here or were maybe partially asleep or just not paying attention, all right? So here we go. So it says, about halfway between West Egg and New York, the motor road hastily joins the railroad and runs beside it for a quarter of a mile, so as to shrink away from a certain desolate or empty area of land. This is a valley of ashes, a fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens, where ashes take the forms of houses and chimneys and rising smoke, and finally, with a transcendent effort, of men who move dimly and already crumbling through the powdery air. Occasionally, a line of gray cars crawls along an invisible track. And this line of gray cars, everyone, is the train. It crawls along an invisible track, gives out a ghastly creak, and comes to rest. And immediately the ash-gray men swarm up with leaden spades or shovels and stir up an impenetrable cloud, which screens their obscure operations from your sight. Now, that whole paragraph, you should annotate that whole paragraph is an example of imagery, okay? This section or this part of the setting is known as the Valley of Ashes. So annotate along the side of the paragraph that you've got an example of imagery, and this place is called the Valley of Ashes. It's a symbol of the lower class, of poor people, because the ash heaps, again, is where the trains would come and dump all the ashes from the factories. So obviously, the people who work and live there don't have a lot of money, okay? We'll get back to that in a little bit, okay? So they're basically talking about the train. Most of the people who are on the train were coming from East Egg and West Egg, right up here, and they're coming down, and they have to stop before they get to Manhattan. The train stops, and this ash, like a cloud of ash, goes like this, and when it finally settles, you can see the men basically shoveling spades. Not shoveling spades, shovels. They're shoveling these heaps of ash, okay? All right, so next paragraph, it says, but above the gray land and the spasms of bleak dust which drift endlessly over it, you perceive after a moment the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg are blue and gigantic. Their retinas are 1 yard high. They look out of no face, but instead from a pair of enormous yellow spectacles, glasses, which pass over a non-existent nose. Evidently, some wild rag of an oculist set them there to fatten his practice or his business in the neighborhood of Queens, and then sank down himself into eternal blindness, or forgot them and moved away. An oculist is an eye doctor. But his eyes, dimmed a little by many paintless days under sun and rain, brood on over the solemn dumping ground. Another image. What are we looking at here? All of you should annotate that the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg are not a person, but it's a billboard, a sign that's an advertisement, an old sign, okay? This sign, these eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg, that's also going to be a symbol, but I'm not telling you what yet, okay? Okay, so next paragraph on page 24. The Valley of Ashes is bounded on one side by a small, foul river, and when the drawbridge is up to let barges go through, the passengers on waiting trains can stare at the dismal scene for as long as half an hour. There is always a halt there of at least a minute, and it was because of this that I first met Tom Buchanan's mistress. The fact that he had one was insisted upon wherever he was known. His acquaintances resented the fact that he turned up in popular restaurants with her, and leaving her at a table, sauntered about, chatting with whomsoever he knew. Though I was curious to see her, I had no desire to meet her, but I did. I went up to New York with Tom on the train one afternoon, and when we stopped by the ash heaps, he jumped to his feet and, taking hold of my elbow, literally forced me from the car. "We're getting off," he insisted. "I want you to meet my girl." I think he tanked up a good deal at luncheon. Tank meaning had a lot of alcohol. And his determination to have my company bordered on violence. The supercilious assumption was that on Sunday afternoon I had nothing better to do. I followed him over a low whitewashed railroad fence, and we walked back 100 yards along the road under Dr. Eckleburg's persistent stare. The only building in sight was a small block of yellow brick sitting on the edge of the wasteland, a sort of compact main street ministering to it and contiguous or adjacent to absolutely nothing. One of the 3 shops it contained was for rent, and another was an all-night restaurant, approached by a trail of ashes. The third was a garage. Repairs, George B. Wilson, cars bought and sold, and I followed Tom inside. So now you're kind of thinking you're at this building. In the building, there are 3 businesses. Kind of think of like some of the older buildings you see in Waukegan, like along Washington or down by Genesee, where the businesses are on the bottom, and then on the top is like an apartment or something, okay? So you have one that's vacant for rent, one that's a restaurant, and the other one is like a repair shop for cars. It's, okay, the garage. And the guy who owns it, his name is on the sign, George B. Wilson, all right? Pay attention to this. Page 25. The interior was unprosperous and bare. The only car visible was the dust-covered wreck of a Ford, which crouched in the dim corner. It had occurred to me that this shadow of a garage, because it's like so, like, just pathetic looking, must be a blind, a disguise, and that sumptuous, luxurious, and romantic apartments were concealed overhead. When the proprietor, which is the owner, when the proprietor himself appeared in the door of an office, wiping his hands on a piece of waste. He was a blond, spiritless man, anemic, and faintly handsome. When he saw us, a damp gleam of hope sprang into his light blue eyes. "Hello, Wilson, old man," said Tom, slapping him jovially on the shoulder. "How's business?" "I can't complain," answered Wilson unconvincingly. "When are you going to sell me that car?" "Next week. I've got my man working on it now." "Works pretty slow, don't he?" "No, he doesn't," said Tom coldly, "and if you feel that way about it, maybe I'll better sell it somewhere else after all." "Oh, I don't mean that," explained Wilson quickly. "I just meant—" His voice faded off, and Tom glanced impatiently around the garage. Then I heard footsteps on a stairs, and in a moment the thickish figure of a woman blocked out the light from the office door. She was in the middle 30s and faintly stout, but she carried her surplus flesh sensuously, as some women can. Her face, above a spotted dress of dark blue crêpe de chine is a fabric, contained no facet or gleam of beauty, but there was an immediate perceptible vitality about her, as if the nerves of her body were continually smoldering. Vitality is life. Smoldering is like related to fire, like smoking, okay? So pay attention to this paragraph and what words he's using to describe this chick. She smiled slowly and, walking through her husband as if he were a ghost, shook hands with Tom, looking him flush in the eye. Then she wet her lips and, without turning around, spoke to her husband in a soft, coarse voice. "Get some chairs, why don't you, so somebody can sit down?" "Oh, sure," agreed Wilson hurriedly, and they went toward the little office, mingling immediately with the cement color of the walls. A white ashen dust veiled or covered his dark suit and his pale hair as it veiled everything in the vicinity except his wife, who moved close.